First quarterback change in the NFL already has happened not because of injury. Mm-hmm. And it's not who you think, or maybe it was the number 1 overall pick in last year's draft. Bryce Young has been benched for Andy Dalton, Cincinnati Bengal legend, I guess it seems like, or New Orleans Saint legend Andy Dalton. But regardless of it, the number 1 overall pick with a new head coach, just 2 games into this season, has already been benched. Let's react on the other side. Pat McAfee actually was on right before we were when the news broke, Brad. So let's play that reaction.
Yep.
Breaking news in the NFL. The Carolina Panthers have benched Bryce Young, and Andy Dalton will be starting for the Carolina Panthers beginning this week. Coach Dave Canales has repeatedly said, Bryce is our quarterback. But with the season quickly slipping away, Canales decided to make a change. That's from Tom Pelissero. That is the season quickly slipping away after week 2. Bryce Young was not drafted by this particular regime. You got to remember that. He comes into a brand new place that I assume had similar conversations that Sean Payton had with the Denver Broncos, with Russell Wilson. We understand you spent the number 1 overall pick on this guy over C.J. Stroud. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Might we remind you? Yep. Over C.J. Stroud over there in Houston. You see what he's doing? You guys use the number 1 pick. But if it's not working out for us and our team, we have to be able to move on. We assume that David Tepper knew that this was a possibility, or maybe David Tepper this week said, all right, fuck it. You guys done with it? I'm done with it. We're moving on. Yeah. Give me the redheaded guy. We have no idea how this came to be, but this is massive breaking news for a very young career of a number 1 overall pick that people are going to put into a conversation about how his career went very quickly and very loudly. I will say this to Bryce Young. Seems like a cool dude. Mm-hmm. Seems like a good guy. His Alabama highlights were certainly fantastic. There was always going to be questions about his size because of what it actually is. That's the reality of the situation. But this does not mean his career is over. No. Maybe a fresh start somewhere else. He finds his team, like a Baker Mayfield, like a Sam Darnold, like these other quarterbacks that have been able to go on and figure it out at a later date. We're not saying it's over for Bryce Young, but boy, the start of it has certainly sucked bad. And I don't know how he feels today. I don't know how Andy Dalton feels today. I don't know how Panthers fans feel, but this is a pretty massive move after week 2, AJ Hawk.
So, okay, a few things there. First off, in the comment, if you read the tweet, that said that they're moving on. Oh, they say Bryce is still our quarterback, but we wanted to make a move because we felt like the season was slipping away.
Yeah, we're putting him in timeout. The season's the worst team in the NFL.
The season
is over before it started.
The season slipped away back in the offseason in 2024. New head coach, you've got a couple new weapons. It was one of the worst roster constructions. You couldn't upgrade in the draft because you traded all those picks to the Chicago Bears. And that number 1 overall pick was used on Caleb Williams. We'll talk about him at the end of the show. But, guys, Bryce Young, to give you an update on his numbers through 2 games, he was 31 of 56 for 225 yards. The QBR rating for him, which is a scale to 100, he averaged out to 8.9 over those 2 games, had just over 3 yards per attempt in the last game where he had 84 yards. He has 0 touchdown passes on the season and 3 picks. But the bigger thing is, you're giving up already on a number 1 overall pick less than 2 years into a season with a brand new head coach. It just feels and smells a lot like the Carolina Panthers organization right now. It just seems nasty. Nothing is good. Nothing feels great. I don't know if I'm a Panthers fan that there's nothing that Andy Dalton's going to do that's going to make me feel better, because right now this Panthers season, again, they're not looking towards – I hate to be this way. You're going to keep fighting. But if we're being honest, the Panthers are not going to be playing for 2024. They're playing for jobs, but they're looking at what's going to be happening in 2025. So I feel for Bryce Young. It's rough, but I'll tell you what, man, he is wrecked. I don't know what happened. I guess I do know what happened, guys. Carolina happened.
Yeah, but
he's not the same guy.
Yeah, but unfortunately for Bryce, you can't use the offensive line as an issue anymore, especially after yesterday. The offensive line for the Carolina Panthers going up against a pretty stout Chargers team. You know, they've got some guys, Bosa and everything. They're going to get some pressure on you. Only allowed 2 pressures yesterday, 2 sacks, and both sacks PFF credited to Bryce Young for holding on to the ball too long. So this isn't what's he supposed to do? The O-line's not giving him time. The O-line has given him time. This is a tough stretch for the Panthers because, as you mentioned before, over the past, what is it now, 2.5 years, the Panthers have traded away Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, and Brian Burns all in their primes and gave up more first-round picks than they received.
And also, those are some pretty damn good players.
Pretty
DJ
damn good
Moore, fantastic. That was one thing. If you're going to draft a rookie quarterback, why don't you keep their best weapon? That's a whole other discussion here.
That's what I was going to say, Rip.
It's tough.
So those stats sure make a ton of sense that Zach was just reading off. But when you're a quarterback that's been running for your life, your entire career, in your short career, like, I think there's going to have to be some grace for Bryce to be able to get used to some other talent. I mean, look, Adam Thielen didn't really get open that much. He got open, I think, one play where he was wide open, but there wasn't much to throw to either. To your point, there's a whole lot of ball catchers out there that can just go out and make a play on that Carolina offense.
Yeah, and the other part of it too is the expectations of being the number 1 overall pick. It's not a guarantee that you're going to work out and be the guy.
No.
But you know what makes it that much damn harder, Kev? Who was the number 2 pick last year in the draft?
Yeah, CJ Stroud. It's not looking good for Bryce Young versus CJ Stroud comps from Carolina.
And
right
everyone looks at CJ Stroud going, man, he is the guy.
Oh, and we talked about this even last year where, Bryce Young was drafted into such a toxic situation. Whereas Houston, they got D'Amico Ryans the first time head coach quarterback pairing. The vibes were there. I mean, there's been everything, and they made it clear that, this was not a Dave Tepper decision. It was everybody, Canales and everyone. But this is, Bryce Young's third offense. His rookie season getting drafted into a team that, the expectations for the team itself weren't necessarily there, but then there's all this drama with Frank Reich as the head coach. And Frank Reich gets fired. And they bring in, another coach in Dave Canales. And it's just all these moving parts. And I agree with Brad where, I think in today's game, rookie, second year, young quarterbacks, we're not seeing as much grace anymore with these guys where, they're thrown into the fire. If it doesn't work out, we're trading you for a 3rd-round pick 2 years from now. We've seen it with Zach Wilson. We've seen it with Desmond Ridder. We've seen it. I could go on and on about that list.
You know why the Green Bay Packers seemingly just have absolute dogs at quarterback?
They do it the right
generation
way.
after generation.
Right.
They let their draft picks get acclimated to the NFL.
They sit. They will learn behind some of the greats. Now, they did have 2 greats in Favre and Rodgers, so you're able to sit there. But the point is,
but Love was on his way before this injury recently. He was on his way to being an elite quarterback.
Oh, for sure. But what I was saying is, Love sat for a couple. Like that's the point is that these guys sat. The expectation that guys are going to hit the ground running. I don't think we're going to see a lot of more rookie situations like CJ Stroud had last year.
No.
Andrew Luck was the only one I could think of in the recent years where it actually was this was a really, really good rookie year. Cam Newton had moments when he was the 1st overall pick, but for the most part right now, especially nowadays, you don't play in the preseason.
Right.
Like it's tough. And then now
it's like no development.
I think the last part, and Zach, I know you got a point here, but Dave Canales, I think the part that hurts, you hired a head coach that you hope would get the most out of the quarterback you drafted last year. And I think that's the part where you're looking at it. I don't blame Dave Canales if you're looking at going, hey, my job's on the line, but kind of also weren't you brought in to fix him? And if you're already pulling the hook after 2 games, that shows to me that either you're never fully were bought into him, or maybe there should have been somebody else there, or because now you're just going to have to move on from Bryce. I just don't see it working out in Carolina after you make a move like this. The confidence is gone.
No, and that's what I was just about to say. The way I'm going to spin zone this could be the best thing to happen for Bryce Young.
For sure.
I think just get out of Carolina. We've seen the whole Tepper situation. Like nothing goes well there recently. Nothing. I don't care how much talent. In my honest opinion, we could be having the same exact conversation right now about CJ Stroud had the draft gone differently.
Yeah.
Like that's how bad I think it is in Carolina. I don't think this is all on Bryce Young. I think potentially the best thing that could happen is whether he gets some more games this year, whether he's just riding the bench, whatever it is, learn from Andy Dalton. In the offseason, they're going to have to make a decision, especially with where they're drafting. They're going to have to make a decision because they're going to be in a top 3 pick. It would be flooring if they aren't. They're going to have a decision to draft a quarterback this year, and I think it might be best for Bryce Young if he gets to go elsewhere and just a hard restart.
And try to learn.
Yeah, and we had seen this, if we want to do a different situation. I mean, again, this story is just over and over the same thing, but when the Cardinals drafted Josh Rosen And they're like, okay, this is our guy. This is our guy. It's a head coach. They bring in their quarterback in the draft. And then stuff gets shaken up. And you bring in a coach, and this guy's like, well, I don't know if this is the right quarterback for me. And they see how it works. And then, we saw with that Cardinals, they were like, oh, Josh Rosen's our guy. He's our guy. And obviously we now know how that ended. They drafted Kyler, and the rest is kind of history there. So it might just be a situation where, they tried it out with Bryce, didn't like what they saw. Dave Canales has a future vision for his offense where he just wants a different style of quarterback in there. And we'll see them move on from Bryce, trade him for a mid-round pick, and it's the same quarterback cycle seemingly over and over again where these guys are thrown into the fire and given no grace when, like a lot of rookie young quarterbacks, there will be growing pains. We're seeing it with number 1 overall pick right now, which we're going to get into. So it's not exclusive to any one guy. I just think that we're seeing a shift in the NFL where so many expectations are placed upon these high draft picks, or even if you want to talk about it like, Lamar learned behind Joe Flacco for half a season. He didn't start immediately. He wasn't thrown into the fire. And you could argue that, the Ravens getting stagnant with Joe, didn't need to put Lamar in. They knew he had some development to do. So they let him sit. Joe got injured. The rest is history. Yeah. It's about development for these guys. And I think the NFL is moving away from that as we move further and further in here.
You need to be in an organization that's going to have belief in you and let you try to be the best version. We don't know what the best version of Bryce Young is going to be, but when you're in a situation and circumstance like Carolina, and you already know what's going to happen, kind of. Well, in this case, you didn't know, but we all know this, guys. Any work environment, this is life. When you're in a place, when you get there and you're like, shit, I got you. It sucks the life out of you. Yeah, you got to find a way. That's just the way life goes. But does it drastically impact you? And I'll use one example and we'll move on. I'll tell you what, a lot of people didn't like Sam Darnold in New York with the Jets, and they still didn't know what was going to happen. He bounced around. He's the starting quarterback for the Vikings. And so far, whatever's happened for him the last 3-4 years of him finding himself again, and even went to Carolina too. Woof. Got out of Carolina, back to life, and he just upsets the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday in Minnesota. Sam Darnold turned his career around, and it's a long season, but it's a great start.
You want to know who else was in Carolina? We talked about this last week, Baker Mayfield.
Yep.
Get out of Carolina and save your career is what we're figuring out here. Yeah. Just do it. And if you guys are just tuning in, hit that like and subscribe button.